If you've ever low-key lit a cigarette off your buddy's cigarette and looked in the eyes, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, hit that little bell notification. That way you can get updates to new videos as I drop more knowledge bombs on you guys. Likes and comments are always welcome, so go ahead, comment with whatever you'd like. Again, I would say something constructive, but most of the time it's not. So we have a weird community. I'm just kind of running with it at this point, just kind of letting it take its course. Some guys have been getting pissed at me saying, hey, you're not reading my comments, so I'm angry because I'm a man-child. So realize that I get thousands of comments per day. I have a full-time job. I'm active duty in the military. Because of that, I'm not going to get into everybody's comments. The thing with the comments is that you guys are a community, and I like you guys to interact with each other and help answer each other's questions, because I'm not the end-all be-all when it comes to knowledge. There are plenty of guys who have great knowledge out there and will be able to answer your questions as well. But I do my best. Okay, with those things in mind, I've been getting quite a few questions on what I use for survival / fieldcraft knives and that type of thing. So my background, just due to the nature of what I do, and I'm not going to say specifically, I spend a lot of time doing fieldcraft, doing survival stuff, just being out in the field and using knives. Probably more than a lot of people, probably more than a good percentage of the population of the world. But just realize where I'm coming from as far as that's concerned. So I've used knives a lot. I've seen a lot of knives fail, and I've seen a lot of knives work really well. So because of that, I wanted to do a quick video on knives, because I see a lot of people spending like $1,000 on knives, and that's not completely necessary. So realize that with a survival knife, I'm not talking about something we can that's specifically made just to skin out animals, because a knife made specifically for skinning is going to be better than a survival knife, which is kind of made to do kind of everything. Just realize that. With the survival knife, I want to be able to, literally take down a tree and bolt it up and that type of thing, or, cut line or do whatever. So it's kind of a do everything knife, kind of a jack of all trades. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of the traits that I prefer in my survival knives. So I like, one, for it to have a full tang. And the reason I like it to have a full tang is because that gives the blade strength when I'm trying to baton it through wood or do something that puts some amount of stress on the blade. As well, I prefer some type of steel that is easy to sharpen and holds its edge well, that encompasses most of the modern steels. And then finally, I don't want something that's too heavy or too large, because that's going to present a problem when I'm trying to carry it, because there is a multitude of other gear that you need to carry in a survival / backpacking / whatever type scenario. So with those things in mind, let's talk about one of the more popular models that people have been asking about, and that is the Mora. So Morakniv, however you pronounce it, makes some pretty good survival knives. Now, there are a couple problems with them. One, they don't have a full tang. So because of that, it doesn't have a whole lot of strength. And I'll be doing a close-up on this knife right now. So it doesn't have a full tang. So because of that, the blade doesn't have as much strength. They're fairly slim compared to a lot of the other survival knives that I use. Because of that, I don't consider them for serious fieldcraft and serious bushcraft use. What I do like about the Mora is that it has a Scandi grind. So what a Scandi grind is as the bevel goes into the tip of the knife right there on both sides, it is cut fairly wide all the way in. Because of that, when you want to sharpen it, you simply place that bevel all the way against your whetstone, and you can simply sharpen it along that Scandi grind, and then you can get a good sharp edge. So that is nice. It's easy to maintain in field. However, the Scandi grind does kind of make it thinner down at the bevel of the knife, and because of that, there's a greater chance it's going to chip. So it's for that reason that I like and dislike it. So again, there's always advantages and disadvantages to everything. Nonetheless, the Mora does make some good survival knives, and I do use them from time to time. Just understand what the capabilities of the knife are. So we have a Mora knife. Really good at skinning, by the way. I use that knife a lot for skinning, so it's great for that. All right, some other survival knives that I use. My favorite survival knife is the ESEE, made by Randall's Adventure Training, or the RAT. So what's cool about the RAT is, one, the point, first off. So I prefer a drop point. So the drop point gives a lot of strength to the blade. It doesn't make it thin or anything like that, and it's still sharp enough at the edge that you can easily control it and do a lot of different things with it. So I prefer that drop point. Another thing is it doesn't have the Scandi grind. Because of that, the bevel is fairly strong. I've rarely had this thing chip. Finally, the thing I really like is the full tang. So the blade travels all the way down the handle, and it is in fact an extended tang, which gives the knife a lot of strength as along with the fact that it is very thick. So because of that, I've been able to bolt up trees with this. I've been able to take down trees, pry apart cedar stumps, start fires, all that type of thing. And I've skinned animals with it. So it is a very good knife. Now, if you notice on this particular knife, none of the finish is there. So I've used this for about 3 years, and that finish came off pretty quickly. So the finish isn't the most durable, and once the finish wears off, you do have problems with rust. So again, if you're using the knife, that rust is just going to come off, but it is something to be aware of if you're working in a maritime environment. Perhaps go with a better stainless steel or something like that. That way you're not having so many problems. Nonetheless, the ESEE is my go-to survival knife, and I would highly recommend it. Another thing that I like about it is that it is not very expensive, which is nice because a lot of people have been asking me, hey, Grantham, please stop reviewing things that cost $1,000. Done. This thing's around 80 to 90. I'm sure you can find it used for even less, and I would highly recommend it. My go-to, so Grantham stamp of approval right there. All right, so we got that one. Next one that we have is the Becker. So Becker makes a survival knife as well, and it's now made by KABAR. What's nice about the Becker is that they have a full tang. They're extremely inexpensive, and they have a good 1095 carbon steel. Now, I see a lot of people who say, hey, 1095 carbon steel is not great. I use XYZ, VG10, whatever, and it's way better. I would disagree with that to some extent or another. I think 1095 is really nice. It retains an edge well. It's easy to sharpen. Sure, it has some disadvantages as far as maybe total strength, but when you're making a blade pretty thick, I've never had any problems. And I've seen, again, practicality-wise, I've never seen any difference between a really expensive knife and a 1095 knife in the field. I've never seen them do anything better or worse. So it's for that reason that I just stick with 1095 knives as far as the steel is concerned, because they're cheap and they work really well. What I don't like about the Becker BK7, this is the only thing I don't like, is the clip point. So I'm not a fan of that. It makes it a little bit more fragile at the tip there, even though it is a very thick steel. So with those things in mind, you have your Becker BK7. It is also very long. I prefer something a little bit shorter because I've never had to use something quite this long. And again, that clip point. But very good, very heavy. So something to consider. And I really don't carry it that much anymore, but I still have it, so I thought I'd show it. Finally, the Behemoth survival knife. So if all you're doing is survival and you teach survival, or you know you're about to go into a survival situation, my go-to would definitely be the ESEE. So compared to the ESEE, it is much larger. Again, 5 inches as opposed to 4 inches. And the blade is a lot larger, as you can see here. This makes very short work of trees and bolting it up and making fires and that type of thing. And the blade is extremely, extremely thick. I've never had any trouble with this knife taking trees down. Took this up to Alaska with me when I did some field ops up there, and it worked extremely well. What's nice about this compared to the ESEE is it does have a little point in the handle, so you can do friction fires, the bow drill, that type of thing. Also, the handle's a little bit thicker, so for my guys with monster hands, this one's going to work a lot better for you, unless you get custom grips on your knife. So ESEE can't go wrong with it. Again, you have the simple drop point. One thing to be aware of is that this knife does not skin nearly as well due to the thickness of the blade and that type of thing. But it can do it. You're just going to be a lot more sloppy doing that type of thing. One final thing that I want to talk about is a lot of people say, hey, where do you put your knife? So I tend to wear my knife on my chest rig. And the reason for that is that if I'm in a survival, bushcraft, fieldcraft type scenario, I tend to have a pack on because there's a lot of stuff you need to carry. And because of that, if I have a knife on my hip, the kidney straps on that pack are typically going to cover that knife up and press it into my hip, or it's just causing problems with me getting to my knife. And it's for that reason that I have it on my chest rig. So again, it's going to depend on what you do and that type of thing, but just be aware of my thoughts on the matter. And do realize that a lot of other guys who do similar things to me do wear their knives on their belt, and they're totally fine with it. So again, it's totally a personal preference thing, but I hate things on my belt line, so there's that. So again, guys, going into survival knives, figure out which one's going to work for what you do. Be realistic with yourself. Don't buy more than you need and that type of thing. And honestly, if you're just going to buy one thing, just buy the ESEE and be done with it, and you'll be plenty happy with that knife. I know I've missed a whole lot of different knives out there. I know there are a million different types of knives, Benchmade, Bush Monkey, just a ton. I'm not going to name all of them off the top of my head. But in my time as doing what I do, I found that the ESEE just rocks and is straight up probably one of the best survival knives I've ever used. So with those things in mind, find what you need, guys, and no matter what, find something that looks cool on you or that looks cool, because nothing else matters. And I'm not wearing pants.